Hello, the doc is in, and welcome back to another chapter of Jujutsu Kaisen, chapter 189. In the last chapter, we have Hakari and Kashimo's fight continuing. They're going back and forth. Kashimo is pressing Hakari constantly. He's trying to blow up his head to eliminate the invincibility. But Hakari is simply pretty good. I'm not saying if I necessarily say he's really smart, but he's pretty decent. And by the end of the chapter, we have Hakari's immortality running out. Last second, Kashimo hits him with the sneak, and so with a secondary lightning strike straight through his abdomen and blows off let's say half of it down the center. And Kashimo's like, bro, it's over. And Hakari's like, what you thought was that it was over, but in reality, it was me, Restless Gambler, his domain. He reopens it, and that ends the chapter. And with that all being said, let's start off with this chapter. So, chapter starts off, we got Kashimo basically standing there. He's like, you're gonna lose. And he has the thought in his head. He's like, okay. So he opened his domain at the last second, and so this time he's going to run into his effectively faster rolls mode rather than the increased chance mode, which he had when he reopened his domain after an odd number. So when it's opened after an even number, he gets faster rolls. And so as Hakari's falling to the floor, basically dead, you have the rolls going and going and going and going, and despite not having a higher probability of getting a jackpot, still having the same 1 to 239 chance, I believe, he gets a jackpot and his whole abdomen starts growing back. Or so Kashimo thought. We actually get an editor's author's note that basically says, actually, this is probability change mode rather than increased rolls mode. And that we could tell that based on the lights under the machine, quote unquote. Obviously, it's domain, we don't actually see lights, and also everything's in black and white, so nah. But that is important to notice because Kashimo, based on the rules, assumed it would be increased rolls, but it's actually just increased probability. I don't know how that works. I'm not going to question it. I'm just going to take it for the facts. And from there, we have Hakari basically giving props to Kashimo. He's like, I never almost died this many times in the same day. It's kind of wild. And basically from there, Hakari's like, do you like manga? Because he's like, this otaku foreigner, that would be Charles from the previous fight, which we have no idea what happened to Charles. I can only assume he died and Hakari killed him, but I mean, not necessarily. Anyway, he's like, have manga on the brain. And he's like, Kashimo, do you like manga? And Kashimo was like, nope. I don't even know if he would. I mean, I guess maybe there was probably a very old-timey basic version of manga back in Kashimo's era, but neither here nor there. Basically, using manga, I guess something he's seen in manga, Hakari decides that the appropriate form of action to defeat Kashimo is to drop Kashimo into water. Well, the ocean specifically. And how he goes about doing this is that apparently, which I didn't know, you can spawn your domain in different locations. So even though they were on the ground at the time, he spawned his domain above the ocean. And so when the domain closes, Kashimo then is going to fall into the water. And the reason this is bad for Kashimo is that because his cursed energy works like electricity when exposed to water, which is a really good conductor, it basically sucks out all the energy until I guess electricity stops, the current or whatever. And so what that would mean in Kashimo's case is that unless he stops his cursed energy and turns it off, his electricity would continue to flow out of him until he runs out of cursed energy, which would thereby mean he's dead. So it's either no cursed energy because you stopped it yourself, or no cursed energy because you just ran out, which both are not good for Kashimo against someone who has infinite cursed energy. But as Kashimo's falling, instead of falling directly into the ocean, because I assume he has no way of moving around in the air necessarily, random cursed spirits just come up from the ocean, kind of like bug kind of things come up. And so Kashimo, then I assume Kashimo's like, oh well, I'll just fall on these. But Hakari effectively is like, yeah, that's not gonna work out, and starts blowing up these cursed spirits as they're coming up to kind of make sure Kashimo still falls in the water. And he is able to. He destroys it seems like he destroys most of the cursed spirits, at least the ones coming out of the water, and he kicks Kashimo into the water. And as we can see, it works exactly as how he thought it did in the manga. Electricity starts flowing out of Kashimo, and thereby his cursed energy is being released extensively. And Hakari avoids, I assume, the electrocution by flying up in the air with this cursed spirit that flies, basically just holding on to its weird leg thingy or whatever. And so as this is going on with electricity going out into water, all of the fish that existed in the water just die, which logically makes sense. But as this is going on, and Hakari is waiting for Kashimo to kind of like, get a vibe check on like him either drowning or, trying to burst out of the water and be knocking him back down again, something like that. Hakari starts feeling woozy, and he passes out and falls into the water. And Kashimo's just vibing down there, which is kind of crazy, because did he even hold his breath to get down there? Like, did he take a breath or something? I mean, I don't know. Either way, anime logic, I'm just gonna question it. And so what we find out is that basically through the power of electrolysis or something like that, basically electricity in the ocean, it basically create specifically in salt water, it can create chlorine gas, which chlorine gas is poisonous to humans. So Hakari, who's hanging out right above the area where Kashimo was basically electrocuting the whole ocean, causes him to get poisoned. And that is another way of killing people with with reverse curse technique, where only really advanced curse technique users are able to siphon out poison, which would lend credence to someone like Sukuna, who's immune to poison, probably because his curse technique is just that good. But for someone like Hakari, and what Kashimo's kind of banking on, is that with him passing out and his reverse curse technique kind of being without his kind of consciousness, it just kind of works. He's like, okay, well, he's passed out, and two, it may not necessarily be that super advanced version of reverse curse technique that's able to siphon out poison, so he could just drown and or just die from the poison, so on and so forth. And so Kashimo was like, yeah, he's dead. And his immortality at this time is also about to end, as he hears the music kind of like, I guess, coming to a close a little bit. And so as it stands right now, it's like, well, maybe Hakari is just gonna die now, perhaps. But nope. Hakari wakes up and he decks Kashimo right in the face, because at the time of Kashimo saying like, oh, it's finally over, or it was fun or whatever, they're like face to face, and Hakari's going down, and I assume Kashimo's kind of swimming up, and then he wakes up and just smacks him in the face. I'm like, dang, that was like the worst time to do that little inside head villain monologue. And Kashimo was like, shoot, this guy's, not only is his reverse kiss technique completely automatic, where he doesn't even need to be conscious for it to work, but in addition to that, it is the super advanced version that could get rid of poison, which really does just point to the idea of like, nah, he's like really the real deal immortal. Like, you can't cheat this. Like, he's just that guy. And after Hakari wakes up from his little nappy nap, he's like, okay, my immortality is about to end. Do I open my domain and like now, or what do I do? And he basically opts, nah, I'm gonna continue to run this fade. He got 5 seconds left. He's like, I will square up for these last 5 seconds. F it. And he's yelling underwater. He's throwing hands, really going for it. And Kashimo was just like, all right, well, it seems like you're in for the fade. All right, let's run this fade. And you see electricity coming off of him, and a bright light shines on Hakari's face, and then a gigantic explosion from under the water, followed by just a huge torrent of water coming out from the top, the surface of the ocean. And that's the end of the chapter. I'm like, Oh, I mean, I guess at this point Kashimo probably would have enough charge to kind of shoot another lightning bolt. But I'm just like, man, that's a pretty big explosion. And we have a 2-week break, so just keep that in mind. It's hard to say what's gonna happen for the next chapter, because obviously, once again, this seems like a very similar situation to what happened in the last chapter, which is that the immortality is about to end, and then Kashimo goes for like a huge attack that Hakari's not expecting right as it's ending. So I don't know. In this situation, especially with he's underwater and everything, and it was also mentioned in the chapter that the water is really hot and I guess electrified, sort of. He's saying that it might be because of that. And so he says it will be more difficult to open his domain because of that, which not sure why, but it could be for any various number of reasons, which could just boil down to, hey, because the water is so hot and damaging, it could be taking damage while I'm trying to open my domain. That can make it more difficult to kind of get it going. I don't know. But if Hakari is still in immortality as explosion goes off, then I'm not going to say he wins, but Kashimo is definitely in a bad situation. He's still in the water, and if he activated his domain, but he activated a technique under there, it means he activated his cursed energy. This means more of his cursed energy is flowing out of him. If Hakari is regular after this, and Kashimo's still in the water, or at least just barely getting out of the water by the time the next chapter starts up, he very well could be at like the tail end of the amount of energy and power he has left. Meaning that if Hakari's alive and well, he can pop another domain and probably kill him. I mean, all it would take is one. I feel like one more jackpot and Kashimo is finished. Like, Kashimo will not have anything else up his sleeve to kind of throw. Because by this point, outside of the idea that Kashimo maybe has a domain of his own or maybe an ultimate technique to like really just like push Hakari's immortality to its very limit, I think Kashimo's out of his bag of tricks. I do like this one. This one's maybe like just a regular lightning bolt, just because it didn't seem like he activated anything in particular. And yeah, like I said, at this point, I think this fight's almost over. Obviously, it's had a number of moments where it's kind of gone like, who's gonna win? Hakari's on the upside, but then Kashimo comes out with something crazy. Hakari's on the upside, then Kashimo comes out with something crazy. At this point, I'm like, Kashimo isn't taking a lot of damage. Hakari has to be in his immortality form to be able to like handle Kashimo. Kashimo's probably running out of cursed energy, running towards the end of his cursed energy at this point. So all it would take is one more domain, jackpot, finished. I feel like that could be the case. Or they could just make this keep going. I mean, it honestly could just go on forever, depending on how much energy you want to give Kashimo, I suppose. But yeah, that's pretty much it for the chapter. If you like the video, leave a like. If you dislike the video, leave a dislike. Comment, do you think the chapter is gonna end? Do you think this fight's gonna end next chapter after that, or you think it's gonna go 3 more chapters? I don't think it's gonna go too much longer. I feel like 3 chapters is the absolute maximum for how long the fight can go. And I'm just speaking about the fight. Maybe there might be an exposition phase, or maybe they might talk a little bit, kind of like with the wrap up between Yuta, Rui, and Uro. But I'm not counting that. Strictly saying the fight is over. They're no longer fighting anymore for one reason or another. But yeah, leave that in the comments and subscribe if you like my channel and my videos. Just do it. Ring the bell too. That'd be pretty cool. And with that all being said, thank you for watching the video, and the doc is out. Peace.